Hello, everybody. Louis from Sparkloop here. Nice to see you. We're going to do the usual thing for today's masterclass, where we're talking about how to grow your newsletter with a partner program. We're going to wait a minute or two. Would love to hear where you're from, what newsletter you're working on, just to say hi. If you want to share like a link to social as well, to Twitter or LinkedIn or something, or a link to your newsletter so others can see what you're working on, that's great. Otherwise, we'll wait a minute or two, let any stragglers in, and then we will get started and take it away. So again, feel free to say hi in the chat, let us know where you're from, let us know who we have here, and share a link to that newsletter as well. While we're waiting for any last stragglers to jump in before we start, I do want to apologize again about the mistake with the rescheduling of this masterclass. Unfortunately, we have daylight savings in the US, but we don't have that in Europe, and our team is spread across the two. And when we changed time zones, it caused an issue with our the software that we use for scheduling the events, and it caused it to get a bit confused. But I'm glad everybody's here now, and the recording will be going out anyway, so don't worry if you missed it or if you have to jump out early. There will be a recording. It will be sent out within about a week. Awesome. So we've got some familiar faces in here. Do we have anyone who's already running a partner program with us here, or are we all new to it? Would love to get a sense for the kind of newsletter that we have here as well. And if you have any questions up front or any questions as we go through, just stick them in the chat. As we get towards the end, I'll take some time and we'll use at least 15 minutes or so of the session to go through questions you have, and really anything you'd like to talk about on the subject of partner programs. Awesome. So we've got a couple of partner program people here already, which is great to see. I think we've waited long enough for people to join. I think that's good. I think we can get started. So let's jump straight in with today's talk about partner programs. So where I want to start today, before we get into the meat of what a partner program is and how to set one up and how to be really successful with one to grow your own newsletter, I want to talk a little bit about mistaken or confusing perspectives. Because one of the really interesting things for me is that I get to peek behind the curtains at all different kinds of newsletters and what's really making them grow. Pretty much every large newsletter that you can think of, every large media brand, I've had a chance to sit down with their team and look at exactly how they're growing and how they grew in the past. And the stories that you see from the outside aren't always quite the same as the reality that's presented on the inside. And in particular, if you ask any large newsletter, I'm sure the first couple of names that pop up into your head if you think really successful newsletter, if you go and ask them, how did you grow your newsletter in the early days? What was really important? What distinguished your newsletter from other newsletters in terms of how they grew? They will come back to you with, our content is really good. We invested a lot in great content. Or, we have really strong word of mouth, or we harnessed SEO, or our referral program was amazing. And all of those things are probably true. They probably did have a great referral program, and they probably do spend a lot of time and invest really heavily into content and the quality of the content where others don't. But nearly all of them, I think pretty much every single large newsletter I can think of, has a story they don't tell very often, which is about how they, in effect, paid for a lot of subscribers. And it's not a story that people share, but it's just something that if you're in the industry and if you've worked in large newsletters and seen behind the scenes, you know that a huge amount of their growth was powered by paid acquisition. And that's something that I think more newsletter operators, especially ones starting out, need to know, because otherwise you're not playing sort of a fair game. You're assuming that everybody else is somehow doing something magical, and that's just not the case. There's absolutely nothing wrong. It is absolutely the done thing to pay for your subscriber acquisition, and we need to be a lot more open about that. The other interesting thing about that, though, is that a lot of the paid channels that really worked and that you could harness if you were one of those big newsletter names, the really famous ones now, if you were growing in 2016, 17, 18, the paid channels that you could use, the opportunities you had, they don't really exist to the same extent anymore. If you were trying to grow a newsletter in 2016, 2017, you had access to incredibly cheap, incredibly effective Facebook and Instagram ads, and you could ride that wave to incredible audience growth. Things are a lot more competitive now. You're paying a lot more per subscriber. That paid opportunity, that window that existed, it doesn't really exist anymore to the same extent. And so a big question is, if you're trying to replicate the success of one of these really big newsletters, one of these large media brands, and you want to grow a really big audience today, well, what's the next thing that you can harness? The next really effective paid source of newsletter acquisition. And what I think, and what we're pretty confident of, is that the partner program is probably that next thing. And it's probably at that point where the really smart newsletter operators, the early movers, they're already doing this. They're already seeing incredible results that just beat anything else that's out there. And over the next year or two, everybody else is going to cotton on. And the earlier you are, the better performance you're most likely going to see from it, as it is more new. So let's take a look. The thing that everybody on the paid acquisition side of things is trying to do is they're trying to find this magic bullet of newsletter growth. They want to add huge numbers of subscribers every day, and they want to do it at a price that they can afford, right? Where the cost per acquisition, the cost to acquire a new subscriber, is affordable. It's less than whatever your acceptable payback period is. If it takes you 30 days, for example, to earn $2, and you need to make the money back within 30 days, then your acceptable cost is $2, for example, right? You have that budget that can be then scaled infinitely as long as you can make it back inside of those 30 or those 60 days. And most importantly, and this is something that most media brands haven't really looked at too much, but is becoming even more important now, is you only really want to pay for quality engaged subscribers. If you acquire 10,000 subscribers for $1 each, but only 5,000 of them are really in your audience and actually open your emails and stay subscribed, then really you've paid, $2 per subscriber to acquire 5,000 subscribers. You haven't paid $10,000 in total to acquire 10,000. You've paid 10,000 to acquire 5,000. And that's something that's really tricky. That's something that at the moment, there isn't really a very good way of making sure that you're paying for quality, because the way that traditionally people have approached paid growth for newsletter operators is a lot of work and a lot of uncertainty. You have to go out and find acquisition channels, whether those are sponsoring other newsletters, running Facebook ads, running Twitter ads, cold acquisition, outbound, Reddit, Google search, whatever you want. You have to go and find those channels. You have to try and get an idea of how well they're going to perform. You have to pay upfront for the cost of a click, a lead, a sponsorship, whatever it is, with absolutely no guarantee of the quality. If you're paying per click, are those going to convert to a subscriber? And if they are they going to stick around and be a good subscriber? Or is that somebody who didn't really care about your newsletter and just sort of signed up by accident? And that's a huge challenge, because if you don't know that you're only paying for good subscribers, it's really, really important that afterwards you're digging through the data to try and work it out. And you end up, if you have a large newsletter, having at least one person, normally a couple of people, who have to go full-time through horrible spreadsheets, digging through, trying to work out whether the subscribers that you've paid for, firstly, how much did you even pay for them? And secondly, are they any good at all? Or have you just been sent a load of email addresses that were basically worth nothing and are just destroying your deliverability? So you're kind of digging through all that data, you're doing a lot of work, there's a lot of risk. And at the end, you're just kind of praying that it all works out and that it keeps working, and it's impossible to scale. You need a huge team to scale that. And what the partner program allows you to do is to flip that on its head. And the main innovation is that you only pay for good, high quality subscribers. So the way it works is you find partners, partners can find you, whether those are other newsletters, influencers, ambassadors, existing subscribers, but you find people who are a good fit for your newsletter. They can go out and very easily, in an automated way, recommend your newsletter to their own audiences, to their own newsletter, to their Twitter followers, to people at their college or university or school or workplace or whatever you like. Those subscribers, after they're recommended, they end up on your email list and they open your emails, hopefully. They will interact with them. Maybe they'll unsubscribe if they don't like it. But they go through this process for the first week or the first 2 weeks, and you can see how are they doing. Are they opening? Are they engaged? Is each of these subscribers clicking inside of the emails, for example? And then at the end of that time period, at the end of that week or that 2 weeks, you can automatically say, well, these ones were good, these ones weren't, they unsubscribed or they didn't open the emails or they're in a country that we aren't interested in paying for referrals from. And then you just don't pay for those ones, you automatically pay only for the ones that were actually good quality. And that's amazing because firstly, there's no time involvement for you. You don't have to go through spreadsheets. You don't have to commit budget with a risk where it might not work out. You just say, okay, you seem credible. You go and recommend my newsletter. You send me through some subscribers. If they're good quality and engaged, here's the guaranteed amount I'll pay for them. If they're not, well, then I won't pay for them and there's no risk and they'll automatically be rejected and removed from the newsletter. And this is huge because you can scale this incredibly fast to huge numbers of high quality subscribers in a way that you just really can't do with any other growth channel available at the moment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through sort of step by step, quite quickly, what that actually looks like in terms of setting this up. And then we're going to talk about some examples of ways that you can use a partner program in different scenarios. For example, if you're like a broad-based newsletter, if you are a local newsletter, if you're maybe a niche publication, some ways that you might want to be setting these up, kind of a playbook. And then finally, what we'll do is we'll look at some top tips from newsletters that are already using partner programs, and there are already hundreds. Most of the larger, more successful newsletters out there today are already starting to use a partner program. And we'll look at what they're doing particularly well and what you can borrow from them to make yours a success. And just as a quick reminder, as I'm going through, if you do have any questions, just pop them in the chat and we will look at them towards the end. We'll have plenty of time for questions. So how do you set up a partner program? I'm going to look at this in 5 steps. The first step is you figure out who is a good subscriber for your newsletter and how much is one of those subscribers worth to you. So what you might do, for example, let's say you're a broad focused newsletter of the type of maybe a Daily Upside or a Morning Brew or a 1440 or a Newsette, The Skim, The Hustle, that kind of newsletter, daily news, maybe with a financial or an entertainment perspective, focused mainly on the US audience and really caring about, selling ads at the end of the day is how you're monetizing. Well, what you want to do is you want to look and see, okay, for each subscriber that I add, how much extra revenue do I make for a subscriber who remains engaged, a high quality subscriber? And how quickly will I get paid back for those subscribers? And you want to work out your acceptable lifetime value and your acceptable payback period. Normally that's about a month or 2 months. So if you know that for each of those new subscribers that you add, that they're worth, for example, or you'll get paid, for example, $2.50 within the first 2 months, and that you only need to be paid back within the first 2 months, then you can say, okay, great. I want to pay $2.50 a subscriber. And here's what I call a good subscriber. And normally what you'll do is you'll set up a geographical restriction if you're selling advertising, especially, because most of the advertisers you're working with, they may only care about audiences in the US or Canada, or it depends where you are, right, and where the brand is. So you might want to set up a geographical restriction. You might want to say, well, we aren't looking for students, or we aren't looking for people from these specific countries, so we don't want email addresses with this string or this bit of text in the email address, for example. We don't want email addresses ending in, for an example, .org or .fr for France, and things like that. And then you want to take a look at the engagement and say, well, I don't want to pay, obviously, for anybody who unsubscribes in the first 2 weeks, because I know they weren't interested. They're not going to be a good subscriber. I'm not going to make any revenue from them. So anybody who unsubscribes in the first 14 days, let's say, no, they don't count towards payouts. I'm not going to pay for those. But it's not just people who unsubscribe, right? Unfortunately, there are people who won't unsubscribe from your newsletter, but still aren't opening. They're just contributing to bringing your open rate down, hurting your deliverability, and they're going to make it more difficult to sell sponsorships in the future, even though your big number, the number of subscribers you have in total, is higher. It's actually bad for you to acquire these people, and you definitely don't want to be paying for them. So what you might say is, well, I'm happy to pay for a subscriber, but I want them to open at least 2 emails in the first 2 weeks, or I want them to click at least twice in the first 2 weeks, or a combination of something like that. And that gives you the security and the confidence that the subscriber that you've acquired is very likely to be an engaged, good subscriber who's going to continue to be valuable for you in the future. And that the source of acquisition that you have and the partners who are sending them through are also high quality. So you really want to set this up and be quite strict with it. And that allows you to be really confident that you're only paying for high quality, engaged subscribers. The second step, once you know who your audience is that you're trying to acquire and how much you want to pay for them, is to set a budget. How much do you want to spend each month on acquisition? And you can set a total budget for your partner program. You can say, well, in total, doesn't matter how many people refer my newsletter, how many partners out there recommend me in their own newsletter. Doesn't matter. I don't want to spend more than $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 a month on acquisition in total. So you have some security that you won't be required to pay out more than you can afford. And you can also set budgets on an individual partner level, for example, to say, well, I don't want just one partner to come in and take up all of this budget. I'd like this to be spread out across partners. So my total budget might be $25,000 a month, but each partner I only want to be able to spend or to earn $5,000 a month, for example. And you can override this for specific partners. For example, if you have one newsletter that you're really close with and you know the quality of subscribers from them is just huge and really good, but they're only going to recommend you if you give them a little bit of a bigger budget because they have such a large audience that they can use up all that budget, and otherwise they're sort of wasting their time recommending you, then you can easily change that for individual partners as well. In step 3, once you've set your budget, you've set your price that you're willing to pay for a subscriber and what you count as a good subscriber, you then need to get some partners to start recommending your newsletter, obviously. And there are 2 steps to doing that. The first one, which is often overlooked, is to invite partners of your own. And we'll look at some concrete examples of this a little bit later. But great places to start here are to reach out to other newsletters that your audience already reads. So do a quick survey to your audience and say, hey, firstly, do you have a newsletter of your own? I'd love to take a look. Secondly, what other newsletters do you like to read? And collate that, put that together, and do a quick outreach message to those newsletters saying, hey, we have a similar audience, an audience overlap. I'd love for you to recommend me if you'd be interested. Here's a quick link where you can go and sign up, and we're even paying for each subscriber that you send through, and here's how to do that. And it's all nice and easy and automated, and they can get started with no real work from you other than that one sort of initial outreach email. But you could also do this with ambassadors, for example, or you could do this with influencers. So you could reach out to influencers in your space. You could, for example, in your newsletter referral program, say, well, if you make 50 or 100 referrals, that shows me that you have an audience that's interested in this and that you can probably reach a lot more people. And maybe my normal referral rewards aren't quite as interesting for you. So what I'll say is, if you make 50 referrals, I'll invite you to my partner program, my ambassador program, where you can actually get paid for every single additional referral that you make, for example. So you can invite those partners of your own, and we'll look at some examples later. And then also, more importantly, you can plug into what's called our partner network. So what our partner network at Sparkloop is it's a very large network of other newsletters that have been pre-approved to recommend your newsletter. They can join your partner program. You don't have to bother with anything. They can just join, they can recommend you, and you just pay for the good subscribers that come through. And all of these partners are very heavily vetted. They have to apply. We have a manual approval process where we check to make sure that they're sending regularly, that the subscriber quality they have is good, that the quality of the content is good, that they're legitimate, and we take care of all of that for you. And then they can come in, they can find you, and they can say, well, my audience is, let's say, marketers in the US, for example. I know they'll be interested in other marketing newsletters, or I know they might be interested in finance tips, for example, and so on. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to find one of these partner programs, one of these newsletters to recommend that I think my audience will like. And because I know I only get paid if the subscribers convert and stay subscribed and are high quality, I know there's no point trying to recommend something my audience won't like, which I wouldn't do anyway, because that would be silly. My audience wouldn't like it. And then I'm just going to recommend the ones that I think they'll like. And it just takes all of the friction out of the process and means you don't have to be doing endless outreach to smaller newsletters to sponsor them. You can just let them come in and find you. And to give you an idea of the terms of scale for this, already, if you have quite like a broad-based newsletter, you can very easily, from the partner network, find 100 or more partners in the first month with zero work, and they'll start recommending you. And within a couple of months, you can even get up to 100,000 new subscribers coming through a month, all with that very high quality standard for the guaranteed price that you've set. So your subscribers will be recommending you to their audience, and the way that they do that is either in their own email newsletter. So as a recommendation in the newsletter, they can use what we call our magic link, which is a one-click auto-subscribe feature from right inside of the newsletter. So their subscribers can read, they can click with one click, and then be subscribed instantly to your newsletter without having to bother with the fuss of putting their email address in on your sign-up page again. So that almost doubles the conversion rate on average. And then also they can use our Upscribe tool, which is our recommendations widget, which is shown to somebody when they have just subscribed to that newsletter. So if I want to recommend your newsletter, if someone subscribes to my newsletter, they'll be shown a little pop-up widget with 3 or 4 maybe recommendations of other newsletters I think they'll like. And it's handpicked with a handwritten recommendation for why I like it. And then they'll automatically be added to your newsletter. And again, you have 2 weeks to onboard them and delight them. And if they are showing engagement and they're a good fit, then you'll pay for them. And if not, they'll just be rejected. Awesome. So let's take a look at some ways that you can use this. And I'm going to look at 3 different examples and 3 different playbooks here. The first of those is going to be for a broad focus newsletter. So think a morning brew, a skim, the hustle, something like that with a wide audience. If you have a newsletter like that, you can rely entirely on the partner network. You don't even really need to invite your own partners to grow. There's enough supply in the partner network of existing newsletters, and we're adding more and more every day, such that within 2 or 3 months, you could easily scale to 100,000 or more new subscribers that you're adding every month. And again, that's 100,000 high quality subscribers who are passing your engagement tests. We have a lot of major brands. I won't name any names, but if you can think of them, they're probably already doing this, or they're about to launch in the next couple of weeks. And the results are incredible in terms of the performance, the engagement, and also just simply like the lack of work that you have to put in to do it. If you have a niche or a B2B newsletter, on the other hand, you will still get great results probably from the partner network, unless you're in a very, very, very specific niche. If you're in, let's say, a newsletter for American lawyers who live abroad, which is a real newsletter that I've seen, that's a real difficult niche. That's one that you probably won't get great results from the partner network from. But if you write a newsletter about marketing, copywriting, pickleball, swimming, dogs, cats, other pets, something like that, you're very likely to get very good results from the partner network. But at the same time, you'll also see even better results if you invite your existing audience and any partners you already have in the space, other newsletters that you like, to join your partner program as well. And then finally, what we really recommend and what we've seen working well for the Alt newsletter, for example, and for others, is to make accessing and getting access to the partner program, to becoming one of your partners, a reward that's unlockable as part of your milestone referral program. So to say, would you like to come and get paid to recommend us to your audience? Great. Make 20 referrals, show us the quality, show us that you have that reach and audience, and we'll happily give you access to become a pre-approved partner and get paid for those referrals. And we've seen this be one of the most effective referral rewards that you can do. And it's such a nice way of pre-filtering, pre-selecting partners that are going to drive really good engaged subscribers for you with basically zero work. And finally, when we're looking more at the local media side of things, local media is very tricky because obviously our partner network has a lot of newsletters in there that have people interested in all different kinds of topics, and probably a lot of people who are living in the area that your local media newsletter or local media publication covers. But also, they'll probably have a lot of people who aren't living there. So what you'll find is that they probably won't want to be recommending your local media publication to their audience that's throughout the world or throughout the US or throughout a specific country. So instead, what you want to rely on is inviting your existing audience and existing partners to join the partner program. And that is a great way of doing things. And again, you can use that milestone referral reward trick to sort of pre-select and pre-vet people in your audience, in your existing subscriber base, who would be a really good fit for this. And one of the things I'm most excited about for the partner program, looking ahead 6 months or a year into the future, once more people kind of figure out the playbook for this and get a chance to work with it, bearing in mind it's very new, it's only a couple of months old, is on the ambassador side of things and on the sort of more niche local media opportunities that you have for growth, which really a large newsletter, a more broader focused newsletter just can't do. And two examples of that are local ambassador campaigns, which I think are a huge opportunity if you have a local media newsletter. For example, recruiting ambassadors from local schools, from local colleges, and giving them leaflets, maybe giving them a sign-up form and saying, look, here's your link, get people to come and sign up here, to put their email address in, and we'll pay you $2 or $3 or whatever it is per good subscriber. It takes out all of the effort for you, makes it super easy and automated, and there probably isn't an easier way, I don't think, to scale a local media business. It could be as simple as literally recruiting people for a summer job and saying, here are some flyers, go take these out to people in the neighborhood with a QR code on them. For each one that signs up and stays subscribed and is engaged, we'll pay you $2, for example. A really nice, frictionless way of growing in the local space. So if you have any questions on any of those or would like some examples, we'll have time in a couple of minutes. But I want to finish up first with 4 things that I've learned that are a little bit non-obvious about how to make partner programs work really well, based on what we're seeing from the, I don't know the exact number, but the 100+ partner programs that we're running for some really good newsletters already. And the first one is that you want to be paying as much as you possibly can per subscriber, but you want to be demanding ridiculously high quality. So it's a really hard thing to wrap your head around if you're used to the old way of doing things, where you say, I want to spend as little as possible, and then I'm going to have a look and I'm going to pray that the quality of those subscribers and the engagement was pretty good. With a partner program, you want to completely 180 that, you want to flip it on its head, and you want to say, look, I'm going to pay a lot per subscriber. I'm going to pay as much as I can go, but I'm going to really, really require strict engagement and strict quality guidelines for what I'll pay for which subscribers I will pay. And the reason for this is, number one, it's just better for you in terms of the subscribers that you will be getting through. And number two, it helps your partners to self-filter for themselves as well. If they're seeing very strict engagement criteria, but a high CPA, they're going to be very, very excited to recommend you because of the payout, but they're also going to be realistic, and they're going to take a really close look and say, does this seem right for my audience? Is my audience really going to be excited by this? Am I actually going to make a good payout? And what you do by being very generous, but by being very picky in this way, is you filter it down to a group of really, really high quality partners who have a really good audience overlap with you, and where it's just a win-win for everybody, and the quality of subscribers coming through is super high. So the gut instinct when you're coming to this from Facebook ads or from sponsoring other newsletters and things like that is to say, let's put the price down as low as we can go, as low as we think will work, and let's see what we get. And that's absolutely the wrong way to do it with this. Put the price high as you can go, and you wait and you see. And because you've been picky and set the quality criteria to be very strict, you get only really good subscribers coming through. Tip number two. A lot of the time, we hear people have concerns about particularly the magic links and the upscribe feature of Sparkloop. And they say, well, in a perfect world, I would much rather have somebody come to our landing page, read the landing page, sign up, get our welcome email straight away, and go through that. We don't want somebody signing up for another newsletter, saying, oh, that other newsletter looks interesting, clicking, saying yes, and then receiving our email and maybe not knowing quite as much about it, which is a fair point. Someone who subscribes from a recommendations widget where they haven't visited your page, they've only seen a one sentence summary and recommendation, they're not at the same awareness that somebody coming from your landing page is. If you just leave them and treat them in the exact same way, they're not going to be quite as engaged and quite as high quality. But the really important thing that we've tested and we've found out to be 100% definitely the case is that it's not an issue of subscriber quality when they're coming through. The real issue is that because that person coming through from a recommendations widget where they've been signing up to another newsletter has lower context, the onboarding and the welcome sequence that you send your normal subscribers isn't a good fit for them. And what you want to do is instead have a tailored welcome sequence where you say something like, for example, hey, it's really cool to see that you subscribe to us from Newsletter X. That's a really cool newsletter. We're glad that you're here. Here is a little bit more about us that you probably didn't get a chance to find out yet. Here's why we're really cool. And you repeat a lot of what is on the newsletter landing page that they would normally have seen if they'd signed up the normal way. And then most importantly, you give them an out. You say, well, look, if you thought this sounded cool and actually it's not for you, no worries. Just click this button here. You'll be unsubscribed. And what that allows you to do is to get access to this huge volume from the recommendations widgets and from Upscribe. It allows you to get 10 or 100 times as many people coming through the door who are just as good potential subscribers, but then to actually really effectively onboard and engage them. And when you do a good job of that, when you give them that opt-out, when you give them the extra context in that welcome sequence of emails that they're missing, they will be as high quality, if not higher quality, than the subscribers coming from your landing page directly. So it's a super, super important point there to give people the context in the welcome sequence, depending on how they're ending up on your newsletter. And tip 3 of 4 is to make it easy for your partners to write a good recommendation. And this is something that it's easy to skimp on when you're just getting set up with your partner program. It's easy to say, well, here's our newsletter. We know what it is. Partners, go and recommend us. And what you want to do is you want to make it as easy as possible for them to do a really good job of that. So you want to create a one page or a 2-pager with some examples of your logo, advertisements that have worked well in the past, other newsletters that have recommended you, things they've hit on, who your audience is, what your audience likes, who would be a good fit for your newsletter most likely. The more context, the more helpful material you can give them, the better a recommendation they're going to write for you. And not only will you then get more subscribers, but more importantly, they'll be able to write and target and attract the right kind of subscribers in their audience to sign up for your newsletter. So putting in a little bit of work here and creating something that's going to help them write good recommendations is going to get you a huge benefit in terms of the quality and quantity of the results. And then finally, for the last tip, one that we see being underutilized at the moment is adjusting the budgets individually for each partner. So as your partners come in and they start recommending you, you will start to see some partners using up all of the budget that you've given them. If you're saying to them, okay, each month you can spend or you can earn up to $5,000 recommending our newsletter, often what you'll see is that some of them will use up that full 5,000 within the first 10 days of the month, for example. And for the rest of the month, they just won't recommend you anymore because obviously they wouldn't be getting paid for that. So what you can do is you can take a look and you can see, okay, well, the subscribers coming from this newsletter, they're really high quality. I really like them. And I know they can probably send through more because they keep hitting the budget cap way before the end of the month. I don't want to up that budget for everybody, but I want to up it just for this partner. So you might do that. You might up it just for that one partner. Also, you might see, well, hang on, this partner is sending through a load of really good quality subscribers. Like that every month, they're just sending us through thousands of new subscribers. It's probably worth putting in a little bit of effort and creating a landing page just for that partner, where it mentions that partner. It has a quote maybe or a testimonial from that partner on the sign-up page near the sign-up form. Maybe it has an image of that partner or it mentions them in some way, so that when somebody clicks on that link and goes to sign up from that partner, you can see, oh, this is recommended, again, obviously by that partner, and it just gives them that extra little boost of confidence and will help with the conversion rates. So there are lots of little things that over time, as you see some newsletters doing really well, you might want to slightly tweak just for them to make that performance a little bit better. And similarly, if you see a newsletter that you're working with, a partner who's sending through subscribers that are quality, but maybe they're a little bit more on the student side of things, or maybe you're just seeing more Gmail addresses or something where you think they're good, but you can't be quite as sure of the quality as you are from others. In that case, you don't have to say, well, I don't want to work with you anymore. But what you might want to do is to put that budget down a little bit. And you might want to say, well, in your case, instead of the $2 per subscriber, I'm going to pay $150 because I'm not quite as confident about the quality as I am about the other partners in general. So you have that flexibility, and it's important to use that. So that's, I think, a pretty good overview at this point of the partner program and how it works. I'm going to take a breath of air and a glass of water. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer them here. I'm going to scroll through and take a look and put them in there, and we'll take a look at those in a second. Thanks. Brilliant. So let me take a look through these questions. So we have a question from Sammy who asks what the most popular newsletters are inside the partner network and what types of newsletters are the best fit for the partner network for scaling. So the most popular newsletters inside the partner network, again, just in general, tend to be the broader focus newsletters. Something that isn't in a specific niche, that's maybe entertainment or sport or financial advice, daily news, something like that, right? That kind of newsletter where almost everybody could potentially be interested in it because it makes sense. Even if you have a marketing newsletter, everybody who's a marketer probably also does some kind of sport. They probably also like to watch TV. They probably also need to read the news or need financial advice or something like that. So if you want to be adding hundreds of thousands of subscribers a month, you probably want to, or you need to have an audience that's broad enough to be able to be recommended by a lot of newsletters. But that doesn't mean that those are the newsletters that will get the best results from the partner network, because if you have a very niche newsletter, you don't need hundreds of thousands of subscribers to have a really successful, profitable newsletter business. You don't need to get to 1 million subscribers. Maybe you're only trying to get to 50 or 100,000 subscribers. And by doing that, you'll still have the same revenue as a normal generic newsletter with 1 million subscribers. So because of that, because each subscriber is more valuable, even if you have like a marketing or a copywriting or an AI newsletter or a crypto newsletter or something like that, you can still get really, really good results with the partner program just through the partner network alone. Let's have a look at some other questions that we have there as well. So another question we have is, are there local news outlets or smaller news outlets generally in the network? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have a lot of smaller local news outlets or local publishers, local newsletters who are acting as partners in the network, who are getting paid for recommendations, because obviously their audience will also be interested in marketing, news, tech, all of those things. Where it's not so effective as a local publication is in relying on the partner network to grow your audience. In that case, you want to still definitely run a partner program, but you want to be sourcing your own partners. You want to be working with local businesses, local influencers, local ambassadors, other newsletters in that same local area, to work with them to be partners for you and to pay them to grow your audience. Jan asks, what is the chance that a niche newsletter in Danish can benefit from the partner network? So if you're talking about that, Jan, from the perspective of a newsletter that wants to grow their audience, at the moment, very little. It's not going to be a very efficient use of your time to rely on other Danish-speaking newsletters in the partner network to recommend you, especially if it's a niche newsletter only for people who speak Danish, because you then need to rely on other Danish newsletters in the network who have an audience that's also interested in the same thing that you are. A much faster way to find those people is just to ask your existing audience if they have their own newsletter, or what other newsletters on the topic they like to read. So in that sense, no. But in the other sense, well, if you have a niche newsletter in Danish, you can absolutely get paid to recommend other newsletters, because I'm sure a lot of those people will be interested in the same niche topic, but maybe written in English, for example. So you can definitely do it the other way around, for sure. And let's have a look. Sammy asks how Upscribe and the partner network are connected. So Upscribe, again, is one of 3 ways that someone can recommend your newsletter. Upscribe is the little widget that we have. Let me go and find that slide here for you. Where are we? There we go. Upscribe is this little widget we have here, where when somebody subscribes to a newsletter, they get shown a couple of other recommendations handpicked for them that they think you should subscribe to as well. So yes, Upscribe is very much one of the ways that a newsletter can recommend you. And it's by far the most powerful and the best, sort of highest quality source of subscribers. Running a partner program without Upscribe, unless you're doing it in the local space with an ambassador program or flyers or something like that, it's almost not worth doing, because the quality of subscribers coming through from Upscribe is so high, and also the volume is so high. Because as a newsletter operator, as a partner, I don't need to think, okay, well, one of the links that I put in today's newsletter, it's going to be a recommendation for this newsletter. So I need to go and write something, and then I can't recommend them again in the newsletter for another month. So I need to then think of another one to replace it with, and I need to come back a month later and add that in. And it's a lot of work, and people are there, you're competing with other links inside of that newsletter. Whereas the Upscribe widget has super high conversion rates of 40 to 50%. And it's just a steady stream where you set it up once. And if you do things properly as a publication with a partner program, you end up with this inbound stream from lots of other partner newsletters of new subscribers coming in every minute, every hour, every day. And they're all super high quality. And it just ends up being a hugely effective sort of avalanche cascading effect of growth. So we have a couple more minutes for questions. I can see 2 more. If we have any others, please stick them in the chat and I'll try and get to them in the next 3 or 4 minutes. So Bill asks how payments to partners are paid out. The nice thing about this is we handle it all for you at SparkLoops. So you pay once a month, you get charged for however much you spent. And we then pay out to your partners a couple of days later. So it's all completely automated, just with the click of one button a month, basically. There's no work, there's no going back and forth with partners, needing to look at numbers and share stats and compare click counts and all that kind of thing. It's all tracked, it's all taken care of by us. It's just one click a month. Great. So there's a question about a newsletter associated with a true crime podcast. And they say they need to target women 25 to 45, which is the base for the podcast audience. I'd like to bring them to the newsletter to convert to the podcast. Suggestions on how to use the partner network. So if we're talking about in terms of growth to attract these people, again, the nice thing is you don't need to target those people in particular. What you want to do is to set it up so that you'll do payouts to people who are in the correct country that you want to target, who are engaged and who self-select as being interested. So you state very clearly who you're trying to acquire and who you think will be interested and who will stick around and show engagement within those first 2 weeks, for example. And then your partners, based on that, all of the other newsletters in the partner network, they will read that and they will say, okay, so this is a newsletter about a true crime podcast. The normal person who enjoys this true crime podcast is a US-based woman, 25 to 45. And maybe some other details about them would be useful as well. That's something you can look at your audience for. And then as a newsletter operator, as a partner, I'm looking at that description and saying, okay, is this worth recommending to my audience? Is my audience a good overlap with this? Because I know my audience way better than you ever will. So is this a good overlap for something that my audience might be interested in? And if it's a yes, then they'll recommend you. And only the people who are interested in what you're doing will sign up and will say yes. And only the ones of those who are really interested will open emails, click, be present, stay subscribed in the first 2 weeks. And those are the ones you'll end up paying for. So you don't need to worry about that too much. What you need to worry about is making it very clear to the partner when they're scrolling through and trying to find good newsletters to recommend, why you will have it. You need to make very clear so they can work out if it's going to be a good audience overlap or not. And then I think this is the last question that I can see from Brian. Are there resources available that can help us apply the partner network tactics that you covered in the newsletter? We want to make sure that we're taking the steps to optimize our growth. So we don't have any resources, I don't think, publicly available at the moment on how to optimize getting more partners or how to optimize increasing the volume, because so far, the volume in general seems high, and we also have people on our team who spend a lot of time helping you to acquire partners and to do that really well. Where we've spent most of our time in terms of resources so far, and which the thing that most people struggle a little bit with because it's new, is in how to screen for the quality and make sure you're only paying for the high quality subscribers. Understanding that and setting that up is the thing that is the most important. But we will, over the next week or two, be putting together some playbooks, some guides, some resources on how to invite partners of your own, for example, how to do a really good job of sourcing those and making sure they're high quality, and ambassador programs and things like that. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll have some guides there for sure that we'll share, and those will be very useful. Awesome. And then we'll finish off with a last two questions. So Jeff asks how the integration is with an ESP called ConvertKit specifically. We have integrations with, I think, every major ESP. They're all great. ConvertKit's integration is also great. It's a 2-click integration, works super well. We have some really big creators and newsletter operators on ConvertKit, as well as on other platforms on there. And pretty much at this point, unless you're on a platform like Substack that doesn't have an API, you'll be able to get great results with a partner program. And the final question from, it doesn't say who it's from. Oh, no, it does. Sammy, sorry. The final question from Sammy is whether we have account managers who can help to integrate all of the monetization options, like the upscribe and the partner, etc. If you're talking from the growth perspective, then yes, we do. You'll get assigned an account manager, an email growth strategist who can help you make the most of it and who can source even partners for you and help you grow on the strategy and on the implementation side. If you're talking on the monetization side, we don't assign account managers to partners. At least normally we don't, because it's a free account and obviously we're a small team. But if you have questions, then obviously you're very free to reach out to our support, and we're always happy to take a look and to help and see what we can do. Perfect. And there's one final question I will jump into very quickly, which is a question about whether we can also pay partners on the back-end sales from new subscribers. So the question there is basically, if you have a newsletter and a paid product in the newsletter, let's say a paid newsletter as well, so you have a free newsletter and a paid newsletter. If I recommend somebody to your newsletter, can you pay me $2 for recommending the subscriber, and then another $10, for example, if the subscriber converts to or upgrades to a paid subscription? And the answer is, if you're watching this live today, no, we can't do that, although some people have done some workarounds. Brennan Dunn, with his Create and Sell newsletter in particular, has done an amazing job of making this work with a little bit of custom code. But in the very, very near future, if you're watching this on YouTube, for example, most likely, almost definitely, yes, you can do this just inside of SparkLoop, and we would definitely recommend checking that out and giving it a go as well. Awesome. Well, I think that's everything for today. If you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to reach out to us, louis@sparkloop.app, and on Twitter, or just on our website at sparkloop.app. We're more than happy to answer any questions you have about the partner programs or the partner network or just newsletter growth in general. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Hope to see you all at the next one, which will be next week. Thank you very much.